for president. But since Donald Trump secured the Republican nomination, Liz Cheney has not said how she will vote in the presidential election until today.
Because we're here in North Carolina, I think it is crucially important for people to recognize not only is what I've just said about the danger that Trump poses something that should prevent people from voting for him, but I don't believe that we have the luxury of writing in candidates' names, particularly in swing states. And as a conservative, as someone who believes in and cares about the Constitution, I have thought deeply about this. And because of the danger that Donald Trump poses, not only am I not voting for Donald Trump, but I will be voting for Kamala Harris in this election.
Liz Cheney served as the vice chair of the January 6th Congressional Committee investigating Donald Trump's attempt to overthrow the 2020 presidential election leading up to and on January 6th.
President Trump sat in the dining room off the Oval Office watching the violent riot at the Capitol on television. For hours, he would not issue a public statement instructing his supporters to disperse and leave the Capitol, despite urgent pleas from his White House staff and dozens of others to do so. This was an utter moral failure and a clear dereliction of duty.
Liz Cheney's endorsement of Kamala Harris will be heard by Republican voters, Cheney Republican voters. It could be a number of voters that could tip a swing state or several swing states in Kamala Harris's favor in an election now where the candidates are separated by 1 or 2 points in the important Electoral College swing states that will decide this election. The Liz Cheney endorsement seems possibly inevitable when we look at it today, looking back in time, but it was not inevitable. Liz Cheney has been very careful in her approach to this public discussion of the Trump candidacy, saying that she is opposed to the Trump candidacy, but never going that step, that next step to, okay, when you're filling out your ballot, what are you going to do? We now have that answer, and Liz Cheney's answer may become the answer for a crucial number of Republicans out there who could end up deciding this election. That endorsement of Kamala Harris by Liz Cheney came on the same day that Attorney General Merrick Garland announced a new indictment of Russian citizens for trying to interfere with the current 2024 presidential election, again in support of Donald Trump. The indictment says RT, formerly known as Russia Today, is a state-controlled media outlet funded and directed by the government of Russia. After Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022, RT was sanctioned, dropped by distributors, and ultimately forced to cease formal operations in the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom and the European Union. In response, RT created, in the words of its editor-in-chief, an entire empire of covert projects designed to shape public opinion in Western audiences. The indictment says that RT and its employees, quote, deployed nearly $10 million laundered through a network of foreign shell entities to covertly fund and direct English language videos on multiple social media channels, including TikTok, Instagram, X, and YouTube. According to the indictment, those videos are designed to support the candidacy of Donald Trump. The first time Donald Trump ran for the presidency, he openly and illegally asked for Russia's help.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. I think you will probably be rewarded mightily by our press.
Russia did exactly what Donald Trump requested that day. After Merrick Garland announced the indictments for Russian interference in this year's election today, Donald Trump complained on social media that it was somehow unfair for the Justice Department of the United States of America to criminally prosecute illegal Russian interference in our elections. The Russian government can successfully interfere in presidential elections thanks entirely to the utter absurdity of the Electoral College. It was impossible for the Russian election interference operation in 2016 to turn enough votes in Donald Trump's favor so that Donald Trump could actually win the most votes. Donald Trump lost the vote at the polls by 3 million votes, a margin that Russian interference could not possibly close. But the Electoral College can be won by tiny vote margins in a few states. Donald Trump lost to Joe Biden by 7 million votes nationally, and he will surely lose to Kamala Harris by millions of votes nationally. And that is why Russian interference is targeted at the key Electoral College states that decide the election. There is nothing the founders feared more than foreign interference in American elections. They would be horrified to know that nothing has made foreign interference in our presidential elections more effective than the Electoral College, a true curse on American democracy. Leading off our discussion tonight is Andrew Weissman, former FBI General Counsel and former Chief of the Criminal Division in the Eastern District of New York. He is an MSNBC legal analyst and co-author of the New York Times bestselling book, The Trump Indictments. Also with us, Rick Stengel, who served as Undersecretary of State during the Obama administration. He's an MSNBC political analyst and the author of Information Wars, How We Lost the Global Battle Against Disinformation and What We Can Do About It. Andrew Weissman, I know, when I heard today, Justice Department Russian indictments, I really had to ask, a new one? It's happening again. We're doing this again after what you went through in the Mueller investigation, investigating what happened when Donald Trump publicly asked Russia to help. There seems to be an awful lot of familiar notes in what we're seeing in this indictment today.
Absolutely. And no one should be surprised. This is something, if you remember when Robert Mueller testified before Congress and he was asked about this, he said it is happening as we speak and it is going to continue. Kudos to the Department of Justice for taking affirmative steps now. If you remember in 2016, there was sort of belated criticism that they didn't take action, even though they saw during the election that this was what was going on, because they didn't want to be viewed as politicizing the election and taking sides. But that came at the expense of interference. Here in black and white, in voluminous papers the Department of Justice has made public, is exactly the scheme, Lawrence, that you laid out, which is to get Donald Trump elected, to have the Republicans win. That is goal one. Goal two is to have the Democrats lose, to lose confidence in their policies, and particularly, of course, about the war in Ukraine. So it's got poll numbers, and it targets specifically the battleground states. It targets specific interest groups and voter blocs. It identifies Hispanics, American Jews, and obviously anyone in a battleground state as somebody that should be targeted to try and make sure that they can win the war in Ukraine by getting Donald Trump elected. That is the explicit target. Final point really quickly is that one of the innovative things that the Department of Justice did is they took down domains. So they didn't just indict to people and sort of lay out the scheme to make it clear we know what they're doing. They also took down some of the instrumentalities that Russia is using to foment this illegal scheme.
Yeah, they closed down those websites that they've been using. There's a new statement by the Harris-Walz campaign by Vice President Harris about Liz Cheney's endorsement today. I want to read that in a moment because it does, when you consider that Liz Cheney made her endorsement even before knowing about this Justice Department indictment, which is yet another demonstration of the danger that Donald Trump poses in our politics and in government. The intersection of these two stories today, I think, is quite powerful. Here is what the Vice President is saying tonight in a statement about Liz Cheney's endorsement. It says the Vice President is proud to have earned Congresswoman Cheney's vote. She is a patriot who loves this country and puts our democracy and our Constitution first. And she noted in her powerful remarks, this election is a choice between the fundamental threat Donald Trump poses to our democracy and a leader who will stand up for our freedoms and the rule of law. In Vice President Harris. Vice President Harris will be president for all Americans, regardless of political party. For any American who is looking to reject the chaos and division of Donald Trump, turn the page and pursue a new way forward that protects our freedoms and defends the American values we all believe in. There is a place for you in the Harris-Walz coalition, and we will continue working to earn your support. Rick Stengel, as a former Obama administration official, your reaction to Liz Cheney's endorsement, the vice president's written acceptance of it just now, and what it means for this campaign.
I think it's an extraordinary thing, as you said, Lawrence. She put country over party. She put the Constitution above all. It's a message to conservatives, and she described herself as a conservative, that she sees Donald Trump as such an existential threat to the country, to the Constitution, that she's going to vote for a Democratic Party candidate for the first time. I think it's really extraordinary. I hope a lot of folks are listening. I hope conservatives who can't tolerate Trump will use her as an example and vote for Kamala Harris as well.
Andrew Weissman, as we go forward, one of the things the Attorney General said today, the investigation is ongoing, and because the effort is ongoing by the Russians.
Absolutely. So two things. One, just to relate these two stories as you've been doing, one of the sad things when you look at the issue of Russian interference in our elections, or any foreign government or foreign person's interference in our elections, that should be an apolitical subject. That is something that Democrats and Republicans should both be getting behind. It shouldn't be, well, I'm for it as long as the foreign government is helping me. And so that is really sort of Liz Cheney's point, that there are apolitical things that are fundamental to being an American. To your point of a continuing investigation, one thing that is fascinating to me, having pored over these documents, is, well, two employees, relatively low level, were charged today. The indictment spells out in chapter and verse two founders of the Russian front company and how complicit, illegally complicit they are. My reading of this, and it's sort of what I call educated speculation, is those two founders, I suspect, are cooperating. It makes no sense for them to not be charged, given the way this reads. So I strongly suspect that what we are seeing, as detailed as it is the tip of the iceberg.
Rick Stengel, at the State Department, one of your jobs was battling this kind of interference.